Hey guys, I hope you're doing well. Today I'm going to be looking at Acts chapter 5, and how I'm going to do this is the chapter is pretty long, and it's split up into three sections. So I'll just be going off of I'll just be summarizing each section basically. So in the first section of Acts chapter 5, we are introduced to two characters in the New Testament that we will not see much of after this. We are introduced to Ananias and Sapphira, and basically what's happening here is Ananias and Sapphira are a couple, and they sold a piece of land and really gouged the price on it and kept most of the profit, but then they donated a little bit of that to the apostles, and the apostles rebuke them, and they end up dying. The Ananias and Sapphira end up dying, and I remember probably the first time I read this, I was like, man, that's a little harsh, isn't it? Like, they just gouged a little bit. Like, people do that on, Ticketmaster and StubHub all the time nowadays, and you don't see them dying. But I think there's something much deeper at play here, and that is, especially when you read in verse 4, where it says, "You have not lied to man, but to God." And I think that is very telling about God's relationship with his church. He cares deeply about his people, and when there are wrongs against his people, he acts against that. He is not passive in our struggles. He is not passive when we are wronged against, and I think that's a very, very poignant and just awesome way to see, man, God is really active in our ministries. And so that's the first part of Acts chapter 5. And after this, you really see the apostles being salt and light in verses 12 through 16. Many are saved during this time period. Many are saved, and it comes to a point where people were even just trying to get into Peter's shadow so that maybe his blessing would come upon them. And I just see that as the church being the church. Like, the church is called to be salt and light. We're called to preach the gospel. We're called to evangelize, and that's what the church is doing, and doing it very successfully, as we see here in verses 12 through 16. And for the remainder of the chapter, something very interesting happens, and that is that the apostles are both arrested and freed from being arrested. Naturally, the leaders of the day were not too keen on what the apostles were teaching. This was a completely different political environment that the apostles were trying to propose here. They were saying, no, Caesar is not king. Jesus is king. And there's some very there's some tension there. The religious leaders who had they'd conformed to being under Caesar's dominion, they did not like this. And it's really interesting, because I feel like a lot of times we're kind of scared to go out into the into the social world or the political world, but we see here the acts of Jesus and the acts of the apostles have very serious social ramifications. If Jesus is king, then Caesar is not. If Jesus is king, then that is the ultimate authority, not political leaders. And that in and of itself is a political statement that got the apostles into trouble. And we see in verse 29, where they're basically on trial, and they say, we obey God and not men. And that is a perfect reminder for our day, that our hope is not in who's in office or what laws are getting passed. That is not our ultimate hope. Our ultimate hope is in Jesus. And that can ruffle some feathers, and a lot of times it's not what we want to hear. It's not as safe as clinging on to a political leader, because that's something that's tangible. You can pick out who you want to vote for, and that's something that you can control. But no, God is in control, and we see here that is far, far greater of a comfort than any type of political or social assurance that man can offer. And eventually the apostles are freed from being arrested. A leader basically came up and said, hey, listen, if this is not of God, then it'll die off, right? It's not gonna last. But if this is of God, we do not want to stand in God's way. And so the apostles are freed from being arrested. And what I see in this chapter is just God working miracles through his people, being his people. They were going through quite uncertain times as the church. The church was just getting started. And so I think that can offer us some great assurance today when we are also in uncertain times. The church thrives in those uncertain times. So take heart. This is not the end. What we're going through is not the end of the church. The church has always adapted, and I can't wait to see what God will do in this next little chapter here. And so we are going to continue on with Acts tomorrow. I hope that you guys will join us tomorrow. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you soon.